Hey everybody, welcome to the show, Board Game Reviews. This week we were looking at Viae Roads of Rome. Viae Roads of Rome is a 2 to 5 player area control war game that plays about 90 to 150 minutes based on the player count. Now in this video itself, it's going to be my final review of the game, but this video is part of a video series. If you want to see an overview, learn how to play the game, or actually see a sample gameplay to see what the game actually looks like when it's in action, check out the other videos in the series over here on the side over on YouTube. This video itself is just going to give you my final review of the game. Now Viae Roads of Rome is a game that is a whole bunch of little bits of different styles of games, and it doesn't really fit in its own specific mold. It's a little bit different from what we've seen in the past. It's a little bit of an area control game, but it's not, because there's some differences in the mechanics. It's a little bit of a war game, but again, it's not, because it's a little bit different from the standard mechanics we have from our average war games. And it's a little bit of a dudes on a map game, but again, it's really not, because there's a little bit different from what we expect from these kind of games. Now, overall, when you look at the game right here, thematically, what is this game? This game is every single one of the players is a tribute for Rome, and you're trying to bring the most glory to the country of Rome, and whoever brings the most glory by spreading influence across all the countries, by raising your influence in the Roman Senate, and by bringing down the other players, is going to be the one who has the most victory points at the end of the game. They're going to be the grand winner of the game. So the game does have mechanics we've seen before. It does have area control mechanics, because you're going to score victory points based on which areas you are going to gain control of. The actual goal of the game, the way the game is going to play, is players are going to be playing on working together to complete these mandates. And I don't mean working together, working competitively to complete these mandates. Every time a mandate is completed, that player is going to score 2 victory points. Now, the interesting thing about this game is you have open mandates that everybody can work forward, and these mandates are first come, first served, so it's a race. So players are working on controlling the areas for these open mandates, because if you get it, you lock in those victory points, and nobody can take those victory points away from you, even if that victory condition no longer exists. First come, first serve. You take it, you grab it, you keep it. That's victory points for the game. Plus, every single player has 2 of their own personal mandates that they're working towards. But the trick with your own personal mandates is you gain the victory points when the mandate is completed. You don't have to complete the mandate. So now we have a little bit of a game that's a subterfuge style game, because you're trying to do actions on the board to make players want to come and do other actions to help you complete your own mandates. So for a really good example, if you watch my gameplay video where I'm playing through the game, the yellow player has a mandate where if this area right here is completely conquered, they're going to complete a mandate, which is 2 victory points. I, as a player, as a yellow player, said, why should I waste every single one of my actions working towards completing this when I can put a nice low-hanging fruit there and incentivize all the other players to come over there and help me conquer this area? Because the interesting thing is, your own personal mandates, only you can get the victory points from them, even though other people can help you score them. So it's a nice, interesting balance. So how did I do that? Well, I put this nice little basilica here, which allows anybody who has a city in this region to gain 5 gold every round. Everybody wants money in this game, because you need money, you need bricks, because without money, and I'm going to talk about the money and the bricks concept in just a bit, and brickstone, whatever you want to call it. But I'll talk about that in just a second. But I incentivize all the other players to want to come into this area because they want a piece of that money pie. Well, they came out there, they did that, and look what happened. I managed to score 2 victory points. That shows you how the game plays. So there's a little bit of a deception in this game. So you're trying to incentivize other players to help you score the victory points, because the game is going to come to an end the moment one player completes 3 of these mandates. And it doesn't matter if it's your personal mandates, it doesn't matter if it's the open mandates, or if it's a combination of all those things. Once 3 mandates are completed, that is going to be the final round of the game, and all the players are going to finish their actions, and whoever has the most amount of victory points is going to be the winner of the game at that point. So now you have this nice secondary influence on how the game plays, because it's not who ends the game is going to be the winner. It's the person who has the most victory points when the game actually comes to an end. So it's not always doing about the same thing. It's not always about going about the mandates. It's about having the most influence. The way you gain influence is by conquering cities, gaining influence on the influence track. You can do that by interacting with Rome, by doing other actions, playing these deception cards, and all these other things. So again, the game has a very interesting flow to it, and the game has a very interesting start. At the very beginning of the game, everybody's going to kind of, I don't want to say pick your corner of the world, but everybody's going to pick their corner of the world, and they're going to start moving towards it because they have their own personal goals that they're going to want to work towards. Obviously, this is a game with mandates. The mandates are easy 2 victory points. You obviously want to work towards the mandates. It's a no-brainer right there. So you're going to start working towards those things, but as the game board and the game state starts evolving and starts changing and everything starts happening, you're going to start changing your strategy. So the game has a very procedural, or not really procedural, but it has a evolving feel to it. At the beginning of the game, people are just kind of just doing their own thing in their little corners. But by rounds 3, rounds 4, you're going to start looking at what all the other players have started doing, and you're going to start seeing that you want a piece of the action, you want a piece of that pie, and that's when the interaction is going to start happening. And that's when the game starts feeling like a really strong area control game. So that's where you get the area control mechanics, because you're trying to control all these areas and influence the other players and make them do actions, whether it's through verbal subterfuge, whether it's just actions you're doing, or just what you're doing, or playing your deception cards. All these things are going to work together to help you complete the actions that you want to complete. Now, the game is also a war game, but it's a war game not in the traditional sense that we're used to, because this isn't a war game where you can directly attack players. You're not going to move to another player's city, roll a whole bunch of dice, look for success, and hopefully conquer that city. Matter of fact, it's actually very, very difficult in this game to steal a city from another player. The only way you can really do it is through these deception cards, and there's only a very, very select few of those cards. And actually, even the cards in there that allow you to take cities away from the other players, they don't really allow you to steal the cities. There's actually only one card, I think, in the entire deck that allows you to destroy a city of another player. Most of the cards are going to allow you to change the influence or the layout of the cities of the board, again, making it more of an area control game versus a war game. For example, there are some cards that are going to allow you to switch the locations of where 2 cities, oops, you can't do in Rome, I cheated right there, but it's going to allow you to change the locations of cities. Now, that may seem like, well, what's the big deal? Why would I want to do that? Well, you may want to do that because you want to have a city where one of these basilica are located, because the basilica can do things such as money. You need money to do actions in this game. They can allow you to get stone. Stone is something you need to build the roads. It's something you need to build more basilica. And stone can actually even be a victory point, a condition at the end of the game that you need to work for. So that's something you also need to be influenced. Additionally, these basilica can also give you influence. Remember, your influence, part of your influence track, and your influence for your cities is victory points. So every time you have a city built where one of these are, if you can do this every single round, that is 2 victory points every single round you're playing the game. That's easy, easy victory points. Not only that, you can spend your influence, your victory points, to start playing lots of these deception cards. And these deception cards are what's going to make the game feel like more of a war game versus just a typical area control game. Because these cards are the cards that are going to allow you to interact with the other players. They're the cards that allow you to steal resources from other players. They're the cards that allow you to more efficiently attack cities. They're the cards that allow you to change the layout of the board, change the flow of the game, and do a whole bunch of different things. And that's where these deception cards come in, creating the more of the war game feel to it. Now, the game visually looks like a dudes on a map game. Matter of fact, this game reminds me of a game from the 80s, and I swear I cannot remember the name of it, but it was something about the Mediterranean where it's conquest, where you had ships and everything like that. But this map has a very good vibe to it, reminds me about that. And that was a complete dudes on the map game that I played in the 80s. But this game really is not a dudes on the map game. This game truly, even though it looks like it, is only 100% really more focused on being an area control and a little bit of a war game. So like I said, it's just a kind of a combination of all these different mechanics thrown together to create this really interesting game. Now, area control games we played before, war games we played control, or war games we played before, so we know what we're looking for in these kind of games. And again, this game has kind of changed it up a little bit. Like I said, in this game, it's going to be really, I kind of want to talk about this later, but I'm going to kind of focus on this right now. This is going to be a game that's going to be a little bit more polarized than your typical area control game, and a little bit more polarized than your typical war game, because it doesn't really fit in either one of those molds. And I think that's actually going to be a good thing, and it's also going to be a negative thing. This is actually an interesting thing, and I'm going to use my own play group here as a reference. I have a guy in my play group who does not like pure war games. Matter of fact, Cthulhu Wars, a game that most of us in my play group enjoy immensely. Whenever he shows up, we don't play Cthulhu Wars because he despises it. He does not enjoy games where every single thing that you do in a game can be taken from you. He wants a game where he can build an engine, watch his engine spread across the world, spread across wherever the game you're playing, and build that engine, keep working on the engine, and help improving that engine. He loves that kind of mechanic. Now, this is a game that he can enjoy playing because he can build that engine while still interacting with the other players without feeling like this is a game where every one of his interactions, all his decisions, are going to be torn apart just by the simple roll of the dice. Yes, this game does have dice involved in it, and yes, there's a dice mechanic, but the dice mechanic involved in this game is not as drastic as you think. Matter of fact, you can control the outcome of the dice. You're only going to use the dice when you're attacking cities, so you're not using the dice versus other players, and you can look at what you're going to be doing when you're attacking another city. If you move to another city, you can look at the current resources you have available to you. You look at how many scouts you have available to you. You can look at special abilities you can have, and you can pretty much mathematically look at them and say, okay, there's no way I'm going to fail at conquering the city. The real question is, how many resources am I going to have left over after I conquer the city? Am I going to be able to do more actions? So it's less of a game where you're stuck at the whims of dice, and it's more of a game of where you're evolving your tactics based on how you're playing, how things are evolving, and while the dice game may do a little bit of interaction, it's more of just planning and being rest assured, knowing that the resources you have are good enough to succeed no matter what, but you're hoping you're going to have a little bit left over to keep on doing more and more in additional actions. Now, this game does have a very interesting economy to it, and this is one of those games that I like to describe as a brutal economy. And I like to call these games brutal economy games because these are games that are not going to hold your hand when it comes to the economy. This is a game that will allow you to put the noose around your neck, pull it up and cinch it tight, and jump off the horse and hang yourself, because this is a game that will allow you to just basically sink yourself if you play really, really dumb. It is very possible in this game to overexpand early and not have the resources to keep your legio going, which means you're going to have a whole bunch of turns where you go, I'm going to take all 4 of my actions and get money and my turn's over. So I like to describe this game as a brutal economy game because this is a game that will allow you to play stupid if you want to play stupid. Now, I'm not telling you to play stupid, but I do appreciate that sometimes games like this people don't like. People do enjoy games that hold their hand, and this is not a game that's going to hold your hand. It will allow you to play dumb if you want to play dumb, but it will also allow you to play smart if you want to play smart. It's a decision you make, and this is also a game that you're going to have to play multiple times to really enjoy. And this is why you really need to play this game multiple times. This is going to sound like a positive, and this is all going to sound like a negative. This is a game that has this very large deck of deception cards. This is a game that has this very large deck of these fortune cards. You're never going to see these deception cards every time you play, the first time you play. You're never going to see all these fortune cards. So as you're playing this game, you're going to start feeling the very first time you play this game that some of these cards are overpowered, some of these cards are underpowered, and some of these things are just not going to be going with the whims of fate the way you want. So you're going to have to play this game a couple of times to really appreciate it, because you're going to have to be watching what the other players are doing, watching their actions, and learning the cards that are in the game to understand that if I see somebody doing an action, I can go, okay, I think I know what deception cards they may have in their hand. Or if there's a certain fortune that comes out, I can go, okay, yeah, I know that fortune's in the deck. I've been planning for it. I've been ready for it. Or there's even deception cards that allow you to look at the future fortune cards. So if you see a player suddenly do a 180 on the strategy, you can go, oh, yeah, I think I know what fortune card is coming, and I know what you're doing over there. So yeah, I'm going to change my strategy too. So this is a game that you're going to need to play multiple times to appreciate the randomness of the cards, because there are many more cards in this game that you'll ever see in your first playthrough. And again, like I said, some of these cards can feel a little bit brutal. The first time you get hit by the deception card that's going to blow up one of your cities, you're going to look and go, you just sank my battleship. Well, kind of a bad reference, but you get my point here. You're going to see that your ship or your city has been destroyed, and you're going to go, wow, gee, I have no way to defend myself. But you do. There are actually deception cards that can actually protect you. So there is a nice balance of the game. For every offense, there's a defense. For every defense, there's an offense. But you're going to have to play the game multiple times to start seeing this and to actually start appreciating this. Now, this does mean that the first couple of times you play the game that you may feel like the luck in this game may be a little bit more than what you're used to on these kind of area control games. But I can guarantee if you play this game a couple of times, you're going to start realizing that it's not really about the luck. It's about planning these decks, planning how these cards are going to come out, and understand that there is always a counter to every single strategy and every tactic that the players need to be playing. You just need to understand the game and watch the other actions of the other players and anticipate those actions when those things are going to occur. Otherwise, like I said, the first time you play this game, you're going to think there's a lot of luck, because somebody's going to get that one deception card, which is going to put a big old nail right in your strategy, and you're going to go, and then you're going to feel like it was a luck-based thing. But again, learn the cards, learn the strategies, learn the tactics, and learn how everything works together, and you're going to start realizing there's not as much luck in this game, because really there are so many knowns in this game and not as many unknowns as you think. Spreading across the board is a known. You can count your resources. Attacking cities is generally a fairly decent known. You can kind of hedge your bets, kind of look at your statistics and figure if you have a good chance of taking out a city or not. And again, if a city isn't even hostile, you know before you even attack it if you can take out the city. It's very simple math. You look at your units, you look at them on the board, you know if you can take out the city. It's a no-brainer right there. So the game doesn't have as much luck, so it actually does have a little bit of a really good balance between luck and skill. There's a little bit luck with the randomness of the cards, but there's a skill in knowing what cards are available, know the defenses, know the strategies, and know what you can do with all the mandates, with the deceptions, with the castra, with the fortuna. Oh my gosh, hopefully I pronounced every one of those right. And you're going to see that it all creates this very interesting blend of a really good blend of luck versus skill. Now the game does have some very good components to it. This map board is designed very well. The art is very well done. It's very graphically well designed. You can read the board very easily. And again, this is something that I would so hope more board game producers would do. Turn orders, descriptors for the game, whether it happens to be your individual actions or happens to be turn orders or everything like this. These are wonderful things to add in every one of these board games. The last thing you want to do when you play a board game is say, stop everybody, I need to pull out the rule book and read a whole page to figure out what this one rule is. It's always wonderful when you see that all these things are included in the board. The components that come with the game are really good. These are all very nice wooden components, not cheap plastic. Again, these cards that come with the game, these are some very thick cardstock. This is not cheap cards. This is very well designed. There's obviously a lot of money that's put in this game, and let's go ahead and make a little bit of a mess. But if you look at every one of these cohort boards are actually double layered, which means that you have a slot for every one of your little legions. And look, well, I guess I almost slid out because I tilted the board a little bit, but there's a slot for every one of your legions, which means if people start bumping the table, you don't have to worry about your pieces going flying all over the place because there's a slot for everything. And nothing's going to slide around too darn much, which is always a wonderful thing. It would be nice if more producers would make these double layered boards, because these double layered boards are extremely nice. They're very fantastic, and it's great to know that your cubes, if somebody bumps the table, you don't have to worry about them flying all over the place, because they're going to stay in a nice little slot and not fall out and go all over the place. So, component-wise, they've done a really good job. There's a really good amount of replay in this game. The game has a good progression of knowledge of learning how to get better and better at this game. There's a progression of skill to this game. So the game is one of those games that incentivizes you to play it more and more. The more you play it, the more skilled you are going to get at this game. Now this game does play from 2 to 5 players. And I'm going to say that this is definitely one of those games that plays at a higher player count. And that's really not saying a negative thing. I mean, that's pretty much standard for any area control game that does not have a map that is going to be modified for different player counts. For example, let's look at a game such as Small World. Small World is a game that shrinks the map down if you have 2 players and makes the map bigger if you have 5 players. Area control games, if they have one set map size, are obviously going to be played at a perfect count based on that map size. And this is going to be one of those games that's going to play best at 4 or 5 players. Add into that fact there are a fair amount of cards in this game that don't even really work in a 2-player game. There's some cards in the game that says pick 2 other players at the table to do something. Well, obviously in a 2-player game, it's impossible to use that card. So again, this game works as a 2-player game. Mechanically, it works as a 2-player game. Of course, there are some cards you have to remove from some of these decks and kind of even it out a little bit, because when they pop up, you just basically can't use it. So your options are to, when they appear, just discard and replace it, or go ahead and work through the deck before you even start playing. But again, the game mechanically works as a 2-player game, but the map can be a little bit too big. And even at a 3-player game, I felt like the map was just a little bit too big, and it was easier for players to move off into their own corners. And you had a little bit more luck based on the mandate cards, especially in the lower player counts. It was very possible in a 2-player game just to get the perfect amount of mandate cards that basically send you to one corner of the map. And at that point, it was less of an area control game, and the game becomes much more of a race. So having said that, I just want to say that I think the game is best at 4 or 5 players, and really was really phenomenal at a 4 or 5 player count. I probably want to recommend it at 2, and maybe it'd be okay at 3, but again, that's not really my best player count. So there's just a couple more things I would just want to mention about this game, and then I'll give you my final opinion here. So there are some gray areas with this game, and this is going to kind of fall into a little bit of a negative here. And I don't mean this to be a negative, but there are a couple things I want to cover and a couple things I observed with this game. And some of these things I'm going to say are probably based on the fact that this is the first time a game was put out by this designer. Looking at the surface, what this designer has done, Dom has actually done a fantastic job with his very first release. You look at the component quality, look at the design of the game, how everything works together. This is a beyond phenomenal design for a first-time designer. It's the first product they ever put out on Kickstarter for this one designer. It's the first game he's ever done. And he's done a really good job, but the game does need an FAQ. There's a couple things I just want to list to give you some couple examples of some things that I really think could use an FAQ, which would elevate this game up into a higher tier. Because right now this is a really good game, but with an FAQ it could be even better. So let me just go over a couple of things that I noticed as I was learning how to play the game. One of the things I noticed was this game is that there are a couple of cards that create a couple little gray areas, and I couldn't find an answer in the rules, so I just basically made on-the-spot decisions. And while for most of these I'm pretty sure I got it right, it's just a little bit of a thing that I think an FAQ would really help with this game. And I know that the designers already started an FAQ on the website with 2 things already updated, and one of them was one of the things I was going to mention, where there is one one mandate card which is really challenging to complete. And it's this mandate card right here, which basically requires you to go ahead and create a connection of roads to Rome to 4 different ports with 4 uninterrupted connections. It's a really hard mandate to complete. Matter of fact, this is another thing I want to mention when I talk about a little bit with the luck of the game when you're first learning the game. It is very possible to get a really bad start in this game due to getting some really bad mandates, because there are some mandates that at certain player counts can be extremely brutal to complete. For example, if you get this card right here, which means you need to connect Rome to 4 different ports, and you manage to get this one right here, which requires you to get 20 different stone resources in a 5-player game, it's a really brutal combination. There's a good chance that you probably won't be able to do that just because those cards don't work together that well. So what I would suggest, either an FAQ or something else like this, I would suggest that when you're dealing out the mandate cards to all the players, give all the players 3 mandate cards and allow them to discard 1 and keep only 2 as their private mandates. That would help with the issue of getting the really bad combination of mandate cards. And also it can help, you know, if the big difference, if a player gets 2 mandate cards that are really fantastic work together, and another player gets 2 mandate cards that are horrible together, you're going to notice a little bit of difference in the game. Additionally, there's a couple fortune cards in there that I think I played them right, but they did create a couple different gray areas. And again, I looked at them again, I'm pretty sure I played them right, but one that was really I'm not quite sure about is there's a fortune card that allows you to build roads, 2 roads out there on the board. It doesn't specify that you have to build the roads next to your player piece. My assumption is that you have to, but again, it's not specified in the rules. There's another one that there's a deception card that allows you to add +3 to any of your attacks. It doesn't specify that if you need to commit at least 1 legion to the attack also. My assumption is that you would have to, because you need to put a legion out there for your attack, but the card is a +3 to your attack, not just 3 attacks. So my assumption is yes, you need to send the legions out there, but again, the card doesn't specify. So there's a couple other things that allow you to do a little bit of a questioning. So again, there's a couple different areas that I think could really use an FAQ, but I did want to mention that because that's pretty much the only real negative I have with the game. It does feel like it's a first-time designer's game with a little bit sections of the rules, so it would be great if there's an FAQ to help fix some of these issues, because that can elevate this game very much up higher on the status of how good of a game this is. Now, bottom line here, did I like the game or did I not like the game? Yeah, I enjoyed the game. I think this is a really enjoyable game. I think it does have its own place in the board game world, though. It's going to be a little bit polarizing. There's going to be a group of players who's really going to enjoy this game. There's going to be a group of players who's not going to enjoy this game. The players who enjoy a really good hybrid game that hybridizes a couple different mechanics are really going to enjoy this game. Players who like a very specific style of mechanic and think that this game is going to fit inside that little square peg in a round hole are probably not going to have as much enjoyment, because the game mutates a couple different mechanics together and it doesn't play exactly like all those different mechanics. So understand, this is a really good game for people who like their hybrid mechanics. Players who want a very specific mechanic are not going to get as much of an enjoyment out of this game. Plus, again, this is also one of those games, like I said, that you're going to have to play multiple times to really appreciate this game. Otherwise, you're going to feel it's a little bit swingy, especially with the way these deception cards come out, and especially the way these fortune cards come out, because it's very possible for a fortune card to come out, and if you're not planning for it, if you're not ready for it, it can kind of shut down your turn for an entire turn, because you can have a turn coming up where you're like, oh, this is a great turn. I got this card. I'm going to do this action. I'm going to do this. And a fortune card that comes up says, no deception cards this turn. You'd be like, I can't do my whole turn. My whole turn feels like it's just been lost. No, your turn hasn't been lost. You need to just mutate your plans, change how you're going to play, and change your strategies. So overall, I enjoyed Viae Roads of Rome. I think it's a very well done game. The game has a very good price, very good quality components, and it's a very interesting hybrid of a whole bunch of different mechanics pulled together. Plays a little bit differently, modifies some mechanics we've seen before, but also creates a new game that plays just ever so slightly differently. The game is very close. It's a very tight game. Most of your scores in the game are going to be very close. Expect a point spread of only about 4 or 5 points between all of your players. Matter of fact, I think the last game I played, the score spread was 19-23 in a 4-player game. So it shows you just how close the scores are. One little thing I do want to mention, it would be very nice if there was a tiebreaker in this game. This game has 0 tiebreakers. So if you are ending the game, make sure you have enough victory points to win the game, because I know the very first time I played the game, I went hunting for a tiebreaker because the person who was in last place in a 3-player game ended the game. They got 19 points, and the other 2 players end up getting 23 points apiece because the person in the game did a complete miscount because they didn't quite understand one of the rules. So we both all looked at each other and said, so do we have a tie? Do we not have a tie, or do we just play again? And yeah, we played the game again. So overall, I think it's a really good game. It's designed very well. It just needs a little bit of an FAQ to improve some things. Understand this game is going to be a little bit polarizing for some groups, but overall, it's a very good design. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this video series. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll be sure to get to them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. Be sure to answer emails as quickly as I can. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this video series and this channel, make sure you click that like button, click that subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching.